folks, my name's Dave, and in this video I want to continue with the introduction to variables. This is part 2, and I just want to review what we covered in part 1. So let's look at this animation one more time and just review this. So I have a box. A variable is like a box, and if you have a box, you want to put a label on the box. You want to identify that box in some kind of way. So I put an identifier on this box, excuse me, a label. And so this is my label here, food for Dave. And let's try this again. There we go, food for Dave. That's the label that I have on the box. I've also declared this box as food only. Only put food in this box, right? No dirty socks, nothing like that. So, and the equal sign, have an equal sign here. The equal sign is an assignment operator. It's assigning whatever's on the right, assign it to what's on the left, right? So it's not like a math equal sign, like equal to. It does not mean is equal to. It's an assignment operator. You're assigning what's on the right to what's on the left. So let's watch this animation one more time. Okay, so I assign the hamburger to the box, right? So now let's look at this in code, in the actual C# code. So I have a console app, and I recommend that you do this along with me. If you don't know how to create a console app, just review the video on how to create a console app. So I have this console app. I name mine Intro to Variables Part 2. You can name yours whatever you like. And of course, console apps are just plain Jane programs. It's just text. There's no, you can't make it look pretty. There's no buttons or anything like that. It's just plain text. Console. You'll see text in a console, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So okay, so I'm going to declare a string variable. I'm going to declare a string variable, and what this does, this is like that food only. You can only put food in that box. But in this case, you can only put a string. And what is a string? A string is a type of data. It's a data type. It's very basic, fundamental data type. It's a type of data that's built into C#. It's one of those types that are built into C#. We'll see a lot of other data types down the road. But this is the very basic, fundamental, built-in, some people call them primary data types. So the string is a data type. It's a way of representing plain text, basically. So this is one type of data, and what this says is you can only put that type of data, a string, into the box, into this variable, right? So let's go ahead and name. We got to name the variable. So let's name it food for Dave. Food for Dave. So that is the name of the variable, or the identifier. And we have to put a string. Let's try to put a number. Let's try to put the number 1000 here. We know 1000 is, this is an int, an integer, is a whole number. This isn't a string. So it's bucking. It's giving me that red squiggly line. Cannot convert type int to a string, so it can't. But this is like trying to put dirty socks into the box that can only take food. That's been declared they want to only take food, right? So it's not going to take this whole number, so it's got to be a string, right? And we know with string literals, we have to use the quotation marks, the double quotation marks. So and by literal, I just mean the value that you type in. Any value that you type in, that is a literal. In this case, it's a string literal, right? If we type in a whole number, it could be an int literal. So by literal just means the actual value that you're typing in, as opposed to a value that's generated or retrieved from a database or something. So this is a value we're actually typing in, and I'm just going to type in hamburger, right? So I have a string. It's a string because we have the quotation marks, the double quotation marks, and I'm assigning the string to this box, this variable. And I can do that because this is indeed a string. It's a string because of the quotation marks, the double quotation marks, says this is just a string. And note the color here, the sort of burgundy color. That's part of the syntax highlighting from Visual Studio. It has nothing to do with C#. That's Visual Studio's, the IDE's visual cue to you that this is a string. Okay, so I have one statement. This is one statement. Note the semicolon. We're terminating the statement with a semicolon, so it says this is the end of the statement. And all this statement does is assign this string to this variable, this box, right? So with variables, we have to give variables a name. We have to name our variables. We have to have a way to refer to the box, to what's in the box, in order to get it. All right. So there are some naming rules for variable names. One thing is you can't use spaces. Let's try to use a space, and you can see it's bucking here. It's giving me some red squiggly lines. You can't do that. You can't have spaces in variable names. So no spaces in variable names. And you want to stick with letters, numbers, and underscores. Letters, numbers, and underscores. You can use underscores if you like. That's fine. You could even start with an underscore, and sometimes we do that, starting with an underscore. So you could use letters, numbers, and underscores. So just stick with those three characters. Those are the only three characters that you can use for a variable name, right? Technically that's not true, but for now let's go with that. Letters, numbers, and underscores. And most of the time we don't use underscores in variables in C#. I'm sure some developers do, but I think most C# developers do not use a lot of underscores. Okay, so no spaces. You can use underscores if you'd like. Generally, we don't. You can use numbers. You see, I have a number here, number 4, but you can't start with a number. So let's put the 4 at the beginning, and you see now it's bucking on me. So you can't start with a number. You can use numbers, but you can't start with a number. So you can start with either letters or underscores. Letters or an underscore. So that's pretty much it. I mean, those are the naming rules. Pretty straightforward. Just stick with letters, numbers, underscores. The only 3 characters that you want to use. And if you're not sure where the underscore is, if you hold the shift down and look for the plus sign next to the backspace on the keyboard, it's the key to the left of the plus sign. So when you see the plus sign, it's the key to the left of it, and you have to hold down shift and hit the underscore. So that if you wanted to use underscores, that's where it's at. And like I said, generally we don't use a lot of underscores in C#. Also, so those are the naming rules. Letters, numbers, underscores. You can use numbers, but you can't start with numbers. No spaces. But there are also some conventions. One convention, one of the main conventions used in C# is called Camel Case. Camel Case. That is where the first letter is lowercase, where the first word is not capitalized, and the rest of the words are capitalized. So notice that food is not capitalized, whereas Dave is capitalized. So that's Camel Case, and we use that a lot with variables. We also use Title Case. When we'll get into properties later on, we'll use Title Case, and that's where all the words are capitalized. So Camel Case just means the first letter is not capitalized, the rest of the words are. Okay, so the naming rules: numbers, letters, underscores only. You can use numbers, can't start with numbers. No spaces, and the convention for variables is Camel Case, where the first word is lowercase, any other words would be uppercase, would be capitalized. So right now we have this variable called food for Dave. So we've dropped this string value into this bucket, right, or into this box. try to stick with the box analogy. So we've got this string. We're going to drop it into this box, and I've labeled this box "Food for Dave," right? But we haven't done anything with it. So we've got this green squiggly line. The green squiggly line says you got this variable and you haven't used it. So it's you've got this variable "Food for Dave" is assigned, but its value is never used. So we haven't used it yet. And that's all it's saying. Just giving you a heads up, just letting you know that you haven't used this variable. So let's go ahead and use it. I'm going to type in console and WR, and then you see I got two options. I'm using my arrow keys to go up and down. I want right line in this case. And now I'm going to type in FOO, and there you can see that the variable name, the identifier, pops up, right? So once it's selected, I can see that it's selected with this yellowish color. So once it's selected, I just hit enter, and it'll pop it in there, throw it in there. So that's one of the things that Visual Studio is doing for you. That's the IntelliSense, and it's one of the ways that Visual Studio helps you out. Just makes life a little bit easier for you. So this time I want read line. So I just type in RE and use my arrow keys to select read line and hit enter. And I need the parentheses. These are methods. It's right line, read line. These are methods. And with methods, you have to have these parentheses. And we'll talk about methods later on. So this first method, right line, all it does is writes to the console. That's all it does. And the read line, you probably guess what that does. It reads the line, right? It just reads the line. And this way, the console will stay up. So actually, let's look at this without the read line. And you'll see it kind of flash, and there you go. So it doesn't stay up, so it doesn't give us time to read it. So we want to do the read line, so that way the console will stay up and we can see what's going on there. So that's what this code does, right? We first declare this variable, and by declare I mean you're saying you can only put a certain type of data in there, in this case a string. So we can only put a string data type in here. This hamburger string, this is a string. It's a string data type. And it's a string because I use these double quotation marks, right? So I typed in this string literal, right? All right, so I have this string literal, which is hamburger. This is the type of data. This is a string. This is a string type. It's a string type, and I've declared this box, this variable, as a string. You can only put a string in there. Can't put numbers, can't put can't put a Boolean value in there, can't put anything other than a string, right? But this is a string, so that's okay. And the right line just writes, it just does this. It writes this to the screen. That's all it does. But what it looks in the memory for this box, this variable that's identified as food for Dave, it finds that box, that variable, and it gets whatever is in that box, whatever's in that box, whatever it happens to be. I don't care what it is. It just gets that box, which is just technically we're talking about allocated space in the computer's memory, right? Allocated space in the computer's memory. So it goes to that box, and it just gets whatever's there, and that could be anything, and that value could vary. In this case, it's not going to vary because it's a sort of I'm typing the value in, but a lot of times it may depend on what value comes from a database, or what value is generated, what value a user types in, right? So a lot of times you're not going to know what that value is. So that can depend on different factors of the program. In this case, I'm just typing in the string literal, so it's always going to be that same value, right? So I'm dropping it in this this box called food for Dave, right? So this is all this is a console app. That's all it does. It's just pretty plain Jane. And this would be, you'd use a console app if you just want to do some processing, but you don't need the user interface, right? So let's go ahead and close that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and create just a few more variables. This one's going to be an int, which is an integer, and I'm going to just call it my number. Just give it a value of 1,000, right? 1,000. And let's do this. Let's go ahead and put quotation marks around. Let's see what the quotation marks do to this 1,000. It turns it into a string, right? And now it's just a string. It's not recognized as a number, as a whole number per se. It's just a string. It's just characters, right? It's just that's all it is. So. And it's saying it can't convert string to an int. This variable, this box, has been declared as an integer, int. That's the type. So you can't put anything other than int type into this box. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put this string into this box, and it's bucking on me. Even though it's a number, it's still just a string because of the quotation marks, right? So let's get rid of the quotation marks. Now it's an int. Now it's an int, and now it's accepting it. The box is accepting the number, right? So okay, so let's create a couple more. Boolean and box checked, and we'll say true. This could be true. You have two options there. You have true and false. It's one of the two. And let's go with and do another int, and we'll say max height, and we'll just say 100. And let's do another string. This be message. That's what this my identifier is going to be message. And I like, spell it right. I like hamburgers, right? So there's a string. I like hamburgers. And that's good. That's good for now. Let's go ahead and I'm going to print all of those values to the screen. And I'm just going to copy this line because I'm lazy. It makes things a little simpler. So then I'm going to copy this. I'm using Control C, by the way. You can do that right click edit thing, or you can do Control C. You can highlight what you want to copy and do Control C, copy, and then Control V will paste. So Control C, copy, Control V, paste, Control C, copy, Control V, paste, and again Control C, copy, Control V, paste, right? So that's the lazy man's way of doing that. All right, so I have now 5 variables, 5 boxes, and each one of these boxes is declared to take a certain type of data, right? And this one's declared as a string. You can only put a string in that box. This one's declared as an int. You can only put an int in that box. Boolean or bool, you can only put a value of true or false. And let's test that. Actually, try to put a number, and it's going to buck on me, right? Let's try to put a string in there, and it's going to buck on that, right? So you have 2 options there, true or false. And it's got to be a lowercase t. It's going to buck on the uppercase t. So we could put false there or true. There's you got to spell it right. Alright, so true is highlighted, so I just hit enter. And let's put, actually let's add one more. I forgot about the double. Let's add a double here. Alright, my double. And just throw some numbers in there. And so we need one more of these. I'm going to copy that. Control C, copy. Control V, paste. Control C, copy, Control V, paste. So just add one more. Okay, so now I have a double in there, and this is a real number with a decimal value. Doubles are accurate up to about 15 or so decimal places, and is the most common type used for a number with a decimal value for real numbers. So we have another string here. I like hamburgers. So let's print all these values out to the string, to the console. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and click on that, and there we go. So all these values have been printed to the console screen. That's what this console.writeLine does, just prints something to the screen. Also note that you can only print strings to this screen. This console will only print strings, right? And not all of these are strings, only 2 of these are strings, right? But what this console.writeLine does, it implicitly, without you telling it to, it will convert these values to a string. So like this int is an int type, so it's going to convert it to a string. It'll convert it to a string, and you can actually do it explicitly by calling this method toString, right? toString. Let's run this again, and it's going to do the same thing. So that's just the way of explicitly doing it. Explicitly just means you telling it to do it, and then implicitly means it does it by itself, right? So we don't need this toString because the writeLine will do that for you implicitly. It'll convert it to a string, but you can only convert strings to that console window. Okay, and it's chow call, so I'm going to wrap this up. So there you go. There's part 2 of Introduction to Variables, and in the next tutorial we're going to look at variables some more, and then we're also going to look at other things that we can do with variables, other operators. So there you go.